Stone Guardians, Crystal Keeper, Gem Lovers and Rock Hounds. Welcome to There's a Rock for That.
Hello and welcome to There's a Rock for That. I'm Mary Brown, your host, and we are on the Psychic Talk Radio Network. And you can find us easily by going to psychictalk.net. The show is also on Blog Talk Radio as well. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode. This is for the month of May. This is a monthly show. Usually this show is on the first Saturday of every month, and we had some technical difficulty at the beginning of the month, so we decided to just pre-record this episode. So unfortunately, whereas this is usually a live call-in show, I'm not going to be able to take calls on this episode because clearly that would be difficult to do since I'm pre-recording. But anyways, I do hope that you will listen to it, and I will also be releasing a short video on our Psychic Talk Facebook group about the topic to kind of go along with the topic so you can see some of the stones, the crystals that I'm talking about today. And if you haven't joined our Psychic Talk Radio Facebook group, you've really been missing out, and you should think about joining it. It's Psychic Talk Radio, and you can find us on Facebook. You can join the group. It's a great place to connect to the hosts of our shows and to see what we've got going on. I post a card of the day every day in that group. And I know a lot of the other hosts are always posting really cool things too, sometimes mantras, sometimes channeled messages, all kinds of cool stuff. So you definitely want to check that out. But even though this is kind of, I don't even know when this is going to be posted, so I thought I would pull a card for this episode instead of a card for the day. And the card that I pulled for this episode, for everybody who listens to it, is from the Whispers of Love Oracle cards from Angela Hartfield with beautiful illustrations, artwork by Josephine Wall. And the card that I pulled is entitled Get to Know Each Other. Learning to meet another's need for love is important for a relationship to grow. So that's something to think about, you know. And I hope that if you join our Facebook group, that is definitely a way for all of us to get to know each other. All right, so let's talk about the topic today. The topic today is Seraphinite, Your Angelic Portal. And the topic just sort of came to me, and so I figured there's a reason when that happens. There's always a reason why for it. Seraphinite, also known as cliniclor, right, is a beautiful green stone, oftentimes, kind of a darker green stone, almost a forest green, you could say, and it has these little kind of silvery things in there that kind of resemble feathers and creates chatoyancy. Chatoyancy is, you see that actually in a few different crystals, like cat's eye, or tiger eye is famous for its chatoyancy, and it's like an optical reflection, and that comes from, either the fibrous structure of the material, like in tiger's eye quartz, or from fibrous inclusions inside the cavities within the stone with something like crystal beryl is another stone that has chatoyancy. And so you see it's like kind of this like, really cool kind of shiny effect, that you may be familiar with, especially, tiger eye is like a pretty common stone that, if you're into crystals, you've probably at least seen that, so that has chatoyancy at all. That's all as well, rather, and that's that reflectance, the kind of shiny, cool effect that it has. And Seraphinite has that too. It's not quite in the same way as it is in Tiger Eye, but you have these little silvery kind of effects, and it looks like feathers, and it's kind of connected to the name. Like again, we're talking about cliniclor is like the more you know technical name, right? Geological name, mineral name. And I think Seraphinite, I believe, is a trademarked name. And it was named because of that feathery effect that you see, because it resembles angel wings, you know. And so um, a lot of us do feel that there is a strong connection between Seraphinite and the angelic realm. And we talk about that with a lot of different crystals, don't we? We talk about, angelic stones. And the angelic stones that we often mention are like celestite, angelite, selenite. Um, there's a lot of different ones. Angelite is another one, that pretty blue stone that sometimes has some little white spots on it. But Seraphinite to me is the one that I think is like wonderful. I really do think it works like a portal. And I'm going to talk today about, how to use it as such. So often we talk about all these different properties that a stone may have, and the big question on everybody's mind usually is like, well, okay, so how do I make it work for me? What do I need to do? And so I'm gonna talk about that a lot. But to give you a little more background on Seraphinite, it is, like I said, cliniclor, and it is, part of the grouping called the chlorites. The crystals. There's so many different types, and the cool thing about Seraphinite is, well, there's a lot of cool things about it, but so it's a member of the chlorite group. Trying to think, what are some other stones that you could say that are in that group. There's a lot of them, really. The cookieite is one that you may have seen. Cookite. There's a few. I don't know. I think there's about 9 members of the chlorite group, and the way that you tell it from other minerals is that chlorites are so soft that they can be scratched by a fingernail, and there's like this sort of powder generated by scratching it that's green, and it feels oily when you rub it between your fingers. So, and it's pretty kind of a pretty soft stone. Seraphinite, chlorite, what we're talking about, Seraphinite, generally dark green to gray in color, has that chatoyancy we talked about, and has a hardness between about 2 and 4 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. And it comes from, Seraphinite is mined in like this kind of small region of eastern Siberia in Russia. Um, I think there was a Russian mineralogist. I can't remember what his name was, but he's often credited with his discovery. And oftentimes, if you're looking to buy Seraphinite, because, it goes, sometimes it seems like it's really common on the market, and other times it doesn't seem as much. The last gym show that I went to, um, I guess it was like the end of last year, um, beginning of this year. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I had to look really hard to find any Seraphinite. And then finally I came across like one booth that had some. And I mean, the prices were just a little bit extreme, and I think you can actually do better price wise and finding and quality wise too. That's the weird thing. Right now, the best Seraphinite that I have found for the best price has actually been on like Amazon or like Etsy. I think there's a store called the Russian store. You know, they'll advertise it as Seraphinite or Cliniclor. I've seen both used as coming from the Urals. So the Ural Mountains, the Ural Mountain range that, gosh, I think that runs is partly in Russia, partly in China, the Urals. But anyway, so yeah, it comes from far away, but at the same time, it's not that hard to find. Um, and definitely worth checking into if you're interested in stones that connect with the angelic realm. So, um, let's get into this a little bit. Now, when we talk about using a stone as a portal or a gateway, right? A way through for us to connect. We have to also, consider like, okay, what is the way to prepare to make that kind of connection? Because I think that that's really important. I think that one, it's really important to make sure that you can set aside time where you're not going to be disturbed. Um, if you can kind of, you know, uh, take a part of your apartment or your house, a room in your house maybe, or maybe someplace, on your property or out in nature where you're not going to be interrupted by people, you're not going to be disturbed, and you can kind of focus and concentrate. Because I feel like anytime that we're trying to connect to another realm, I think it's really important to be able to like kind of just tune in to what we're trying to tune into and not have distractions. Believe me, there's nothing worse than, for me, I love, you know, part of my practice is doing shamanic journeying, and I love doing that. But there's nothing worse than like the phone ringing in the middle of it. It's like you're just about to have this profound moment, and it's like the phone rings. So you want to make sure that you have some time where you won't be disturbed by people, interrupting you. But and that also includes like on the phone. So turn off your notifications, turn off your phone, turn off your TV, turn off all the electronics if you can, and not necessarily all of them. Um, and you can either do this with, playing some background music. I think that's helpful to people. Some people like to play like kind of, spa music, Reiki music. You can find a lot of like hours and hours of free, meditation music just by going on YouTube. You could have that going in the background, whatever it is that is going to help you to just relax and get in the zone and help, whatever supports you in trying to make this connection with the angelic realm. So that's like the number one thing. Time where you won't be disturbed. You can play music if you want to, if that's going to help you get into the zone. That's great. We all have our own way of kind of setting the stage for these kind of things, don't we? And I can only, share what I do, but I think the most meaningful thing and the most meaningful way to do it, the most effective way to do it is to do the things that really resonate with you. Another thing that I like to do, and I'm sharing this to just kind of give you some ideas to think about, because that often is something I get asked a lot is like, well, how do I do this? Or, even not even just about crystals, how do I meditate? How do I make connections with, other uh, spiritual planes. And so, um, I'm just throwing these ideas out for you. I'm not saying they're the only way to do it at all. Just so you understand, use what resonates and throw away the rest, right? But what what I like to do is once I've set aside the time and I've turned off the phones, and nobody's going to call me, and I've turned off my notifications, so if anybody messages me, I don't hear that dinging noise in the background that kind of distracts me. Um, then I like to set sacred space. And because this is about connecting to the angelic realm and using the Seraphinite stones as a portal, I like to incorporate the angelic realm in the way that I set up sacred space. And my method of creating sacred space, one of my methods, is to work with the angels and to address the angels um, according to the cardinal directions that I feel they are connected to. Now, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, and you may find that either you're aware of this or you're not, right? And so you may, and always, research everything. It's like we learn so much by also doing our own research. I'm just trying to uh, give you a place to start from, but I'm not saying, what I have to offer is the be all end all, right? But if you look into this, the angels in the cardinal directions, what angels associated with the north, south, east, and west, you're going to find, differing opinions on that, right? And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. And I've done my own research and have found differing opinions on it as well. But for me, I associate the north direction with Archangel Gabriel, and I associate the east direction with Archangel Michael, and I associate the southernly, the south direction with Archangel Uriel, and I associate the west with Archangel Raphael. Okay. And those are just my own personal associations for the angels with those cardinal directions. There's a few different other ones out there. And you just got to test it out, right? And see like what works for you. Because here's the thing, you do a lot of this research and you read what somebody says and you think, okay, so that's how it is. Well, not necessarily. We are talking about the angelic realm. We're talking about another realm. There's there's a sense of us, we're talking about spirituality as well, right? And so it's not like anyone is truly an authority on the angelic realm, on everything that angels do and everything that angels are, and everything associated with angels. I mean, you're going to see a wide variety of opinion on it, and I always encourage people to test it out. What's effective? What is effective for you, right? And these directions are what has been for effective rather for me. And so how do we do that? So usually, what I do is I start creating my sacred space. Um, I do tend to start in the east, and I go from the east to the south to the west and to the north finally. And as I get up and face each of these directions, there's some physicality involved in this. You could just turn to each direction. For me, it helps to do um, it helps me to do something physical movement and stuff. I think, really helps energetically. You get that energy flowing as you're doing this as well, and it seems to have like even more of a tangible quality to me. So as I face each of these directions and I address the angel of that direction, that's the easiest way to kind of put it. And and these angels, Uriel, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, are sometimes referred to as the Watchtower angels. You may see that come up as well. But as I face each direction and I address the angel, you want to, you know, speak the words that actually have meaning for you, not some um, rehearsed, kind of line or saying or incantation. It's like, why do you want to connect to the angels to begin with, right? And each particular angel, what is it that you're asking? Are you just asking them to be there for support? Um, you don't have to always ask them something either. You can simply, acknowledge them. If you feel already that, any of these angels have been helpful in your life, you can thank them. You can acknowledge that. But the main thing that you're doing on top of that is you're bringing them in. You're asking them to help you create this sacred space wherein you can then use your Seraphinite stones as a portal in which to connect with them. So after you go through all the four directions, and uh, also, Mother Earth, because we're talking about crystals, and that's where we get our crystals from. And so Mother Earth is we're standing on Mother Earth, right? Everything sits on Mother Earth. She's below us. That you can incorporate Mother Earth as well, and the sky above, whatever that mean to you. If you believe in like a creator or the universe or even the moon, how whatever really fits for you. I'm asking you not to copy what I do, really, but to make this your own so that it is meaningful for you. So once you create your sacred space in your own way, and you've made sure nobody's going to bother you, you want to take your piece of Seraphinite and you want to hold it, put it in your pocket, put it on top of your body. You could do a crystal layout, like a grid on your body, or just hold it in your hand. And you're going to focus. You can play music, remember that, if it's going to help you get in the zone. A drumming track is terrific for journeying. I do think of this as a type of journeying, only we're journeying what in contemporary shamanism might be referred to as the upper world, right? Where we think of, the angels residing. You could just think of it as the angelic realm, or whatever really fits for you. Or if you're really comfortable with that idea or familiar with the idea of like the different worlds and shamanic practice, then, create your own space in your mind, a meeting place, and that can be anything. What really matters is like that you're comfortable, that you're going to create, you can visualize this place, or you can not visualize. You can just be open and be focused and be holding your stone. And if you look on practically any crystal that you have, and I really do recommend tumbled stones. I think they're great for it. But you kind of want to look it over, and almost every tumbled stone that you're ever going to have is going to have like there's going to be some place where things are a little different, like a little notch in it, a little place where you can grip. You can think of it almost as like, okay, this is like where I open the door, or this is the keyhole, you know. So you feel around on your crystal and kind of feel for like what's the most natural place that I would, think of as being a way to open the door. Okay, and that may sound um, confusing. I hope not. But any kind of different kind of feel on the crystal. That's a part that you want to think of is like kind of like the now you're sticking the key in the door by pressing your thumb on it. However, experiment with this as well. Whatever works for you. Like that's just an added tool to use in using a stone as a portal or a gateway to another realm. And really, the less expectations that you can have, I think the better. The more that you can kind of, you know, divest yourself of any, particular way it has to be. I think that that's very helpful because, we don't need to like kind of let our own expectations and ideas and everything sort of crowd in because we want to get as clear um, a, a message or an experience as we can with keeping our own self out of it. It's hard to explain, right? So imagination and intuition go hand in hand, really. So often, we are asked to visualize something or we're trying to visualize something, and often, that first effort of imagination is usually what leads to, a real breakthrough of intuition. Because there's something about using our imagination that really, kind of, I don't know, it unlocks something within us, unlocks our intuition, and allows us to then have our own kind of direct revelation. Because that's another thing a lot of people worry about. It's like, well, I thought, I thought I was talking to the angels, but, am I making it all up? That's something I hear a lot. And, you know, no, you're not making it all up. But I mean, often, you got to start somewhere, and imagination usually is like the Kickstarter. So, don't worry about that if you feel like you want to visualize things. Um, and if you find yourself as you're, you know, being comfortable, either you're laying down or you're sitting in a chair or you're just sitting there, holding your stones on the floor with pillows, whatever is going to make you physically comfortable so that, any physical discomfort doesn't distract you. Because that can kind of take you out of an experience too, where you're like, ow, my ankle, you know. Um, so that's something to think about too. So you want to be comfortable. You don't want to be disturbed. Play music or not play music, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Set sacred space in your own special way. Incorporate the angels into creating that sacred space. Because we're trying to, make that connection with the angelic realm. And also, the other thing too about this is that every crystal that there is connected to the Davic kingdom. You know, so that's kind of like Seraphinite has its own uh, angelic kind of presence, and really that's kind of what the conduit is, or kind of the gateway is, right? Is through the David kingdom to the angelic realm, because there is a connection. It's like the earth and spirit connection. Um, and so, that's part of it. So you can, approach it that way as well, where you call in the spirit of the crystal. And you don't have to get all technical and learn all about the David kingdom and all, and whatnot. You can actually just talk to your stone. If you have a piece of Seraphinite, you can, address it. Seraphinite, please help me. I want to connect with the angels and see if there's any guidance for me. If you have a specific question, that's great. It's always about setting our intention first before we go into uh, create these kind of experiences because again, we're often kickstarting it off with our imagination, and so there is a bit of creativity involved, but creativity is wonderful because it's also helps intuition flow. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Usually, 30 minutes I think is a good amount of time for this. Having the stone like physically on hand, really helps a lot. And it's it's just kind of a great way to connect with the angelic kingdom, to see what angels, even our guardian angels, sometimes will come through with a message when we approach things in this way. And that's wonderful too. And, build off of the experience, whatever angel comes to you. Now I mentioned the four angels, the watchtower angels that I use to create the sacred space, but, that's to help you enter the angelic realm. You're not limited to those particular angels. There may be a totally different angel that you have a connection with or a message from. And so, what is that connection like, right? Sometimes, there are books where people have described their angelic experiences. I've talked about mine on this show. In the past and on previous shows that I've been on, like the Mystical Musing show, and I've guested on other people's shows. And it, it can be quite a variety of things. You might get an image in your mind, or you might hear something, or you might just get a feeling. You could even get a taste in your mouth. You could even like smell a fragrance, that's unusual that, you weren't smelling before you started doing this, that kind of thing. And, then you want to kind of, write down your experiences afterwards. It's always terrific if you can like keep a little journal of this, whether it's a journey journal or a dream journal or a meditation journal or your angel journal, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to put in there, and kind of, kind of try to track the different things that you experience. If you have a full blown conversation, that's wonderful as well. Uh, Go in there with, a reason though, your intention. Why do I want this connection? What am I looking for? Am I just looking for a message for me? That's a great way to start. And if you have a specific question about something else as well that you feel like, the angelic realm would really be the place to, try to get an answer on. One thing I can tell you is that oftentimes we don't get answers on the the more mundane things. I know, people have a lot of experiences with finding parking spots, with with angels and all kinds of things, and that's great. And for this, I feel like it's not really about that, you know. It's not about the trivial things. Not that parking spots are trivial. Of course, they're important, especially in the moment that you need them, right? But you want to ask like maybe like the broader questions that or the bigger questions that have to do with the path that you're on. You know, are you on the right path? And I think for most people we are on the right path. But um, you want advice that's going to be useful to you for a longer period of time, right? Um, when we ask for things that are like immediate, like, parking spaces, that's advice that's only going to be, useful to us for, what, a few minutes, you know? And this is more advice in guidance. Yeah, I think of it more as guidance that we're looking for when we connect with the angelic realm. And so that's something to think about. And often, we go in there, we set our intention of why we want to make this connection to the angelic realm. And sometimes the guidance